don't think that the president discussed it with any of the other parties, because I think it was just a shuffle of the ANC representatives of the GNU. So the way I understand that it works is that the ANC has been allocated certain portfolios in terms of the GNU agreement, and they can put into those portfolios who the leader sees fit. The president doesn't have to consult us when he chooses various ANC people to be in particular ministries, but that also leaves us free to criticize it very strongly, which is exactly what we did. We do not believe that Minister Similani, while it seems to be common cause, and certainly there's been no denial of the fact that she got a hefty loan from VBS at the time to start a coffee shop that didn't work. And while that is still being looked into and being cleared up, there is no basis on which the president can move her from justice to human settlements. So the bottom line is this, that we were highly critical of it. So the president can move whichever ANC ministers he likes into the position. We can criticize them. That the law must take its course on Phala Phala, and we've always said that. And we're not in charge of the criminal justice system, unfortunately, but we've always supported the law taking its course. The court must first run its course, and it's not for me to decide. I'm not in government. I'm not a spokesman for the GNU. I am running the DA as a party and managing the interface between the politicians and the organization, but I'm not in there, and the people who would have to decide are the people in the DA caucus. So it's not for me to decide. What I decide is actually irrelevant here. Not much I can say because it is a confidential meeting. But what I am free to say is that I think that the mechanism is working well. I do think that all parties are allowed to state their case. I do think that the state law advisor has been given very good advice and has been unpacking the legislation that needs to be, and the court cases that need to be understood. And I do believe the Secretariat has been doing a good job. So I think the mechanism has been working, but let's see what the outcome thereof is. Government, and as I say, I'm not a member of the GNU. I said before this meeting that I could not speak about the GNU, and I've made it clear in all the podcasts that I am not a spokesperson for the GNU, and I'm not in the GNU. But this government has only been in office since May, and it takes a very long time to pass legislation. We have draft bills before the Parliament, excuse me. The most crucial are the threshold legislation bills that we've got, and the various ones relating to the management of coalitions. Those we've got there. But they have gone to the various committees now. They're in process, but it's too early to say that we have passed any of those laws yet, because it takes much longer than that in Parliament. If you look at the NHI, how strongly we have opposed that, how absolutely firmly our Deputy Minister of Finance drew the line under going into deficit budgeting for the NHI. You have ignored the incredible task of getting a debt anchor into the budget. You have ignored the extraordinary fight we've put up on the Bella Bill. You've ignored all of the issues that we have taken a very clear position on and continue to criticize the ANC on. The people who are supposed to be and are holding the ANC and our whole government to account are our members of Parliament, because that is the accountability mechanism, and the DA in Parliament continues to do this. So if you can give an example of where the DA has sold out to the ANC and give me a concrete example of exactly where that has happened, I will answer the question. But to have these broad general assertions from what is put onto the comment section of a podcast on Twitter, that's why we can't believe what the media says anymore, because they pick up this kind of nonsense, state it as a fact, without any concrete evidence. I can't talk about the GNU because I'm not in the GNU. But from what I've heard is it's a mixed bag. Some DGs are very committed to the democratic process, which says that if the people vote in a certain way, and if you get a new minister representing a certain party, then your job is to implement, not argue. And there are a lot of people who are doing that, and there's some that aren't. Everything we're going to do in government is going to be related to growing the economy and getting people into jobs. That is the number one priority of South Africa, number one above all else. And everything we do and all our priorities are geared towards making it easier for people to get a job and to keep a job and to make it easier for investors to create jobs. That is what we need to do. Now we are hoping, and we're going to measure ourselves against the yardstick of, did growth go up and did unemployment come down? We're not going to solve the unemployment crisis in 5 years. We're not going to solve it in 10 years. No one is. But what we've got to see is whether we can move the dial in the right direction. That is the most important thing. All accept that jobs are primarily created by the private sector. And jobs are a consequence of confidence in the government and the future of the country. And when that confidence exists, people with good ideas and capital start businesses and employ people. And so our government's job must be to create the conditions in which that can happen. If I look at Cape Town and the Western Cape, you will see what I mean. People can have confidence that there will be clean water, that there will be electricity, that the roads won't be filled with potholes, that they will be able to send their children to good schools, that healthcare will work in the public and the private sector, that their refuse will be removed, that the sewage will be flushed away without polluting the water sources, that the environment will be clean, and that government will be stable, and that policies will be designed to encourage investment. And that has now been going on for almost 20 years. In 2026, we will have been in office in Cape Town, implementing those policies for 20 years. And that creates a virtuous cycle. So we are having a boom in Cape Town and the Western Cape as people move to the province, as people invest in the province, as people create jobs in the province, as visitors come to the province, because everything works. And everything works because there is a competent, corruption-free government. That does not mean we don't have individual corruption scandals, but when we do in the DA, we act and we get rid of people, not in the ANC. So people have confidence that where the DA governs, things will be stable and things will work. And when that happens, you have investment, growth, and jobs. That is what you are seeing as a culmination of 20 years of DA governance. And as large parts of the country have water shutdowns for long periods, Gauteng, KwaZulu-Natal, Mpumalanga, the Free State. In Cape Town, we're investing record sums in our infrastructure. A, because we didn't steal the money, and B, because we've been investing steadily into maintenance since 2006. And that is the consequence of a virtuous cycle of good governance. The medium-term budget policy statement, which is exactly the platform in which that is articulated. So go and read Enoch Godongwana's speech there. Go and read what Deputy Minister Ashel Sarupin has been saying. That is the platform. It is debt stabilization. It is a spending review. It is to get a funded budget, and it is to eradicate corruption from the system. That is the first thing you've got to do. And then you have to get competent people in key positions to be able to govern properly, to create a virtuous cycle. And as I say, to get peak benefit of that, you have to have been doing that for 20 years. We have to turn around a government that is completely and utterly broken through corruption, through mismanagement, through cadre deployment. If you look at Johannesburg, and my heart bleeds because I was born in Johannesburg and I'm very committed to Johannesburg, it is so broken that it's going to take us at least 10 years to stabilize and fix if voters are sensible enough to put in a DA mayor there. So it's going to be absolutely critical for us to start by fixing the basics, by getting the right people in the right positions, by stopping corruption, and by putting the resources where they need to be. In the Gauteng as a whole in this last election, we were just 6 percentage points behind the ANC, which is very, very close. And if the people who had voted for BOSA and RISE and Action and all those other tiny parties had consolidated behind the DA, we would have been bigger than the ANC. So the important thing is for us to consolidate. The ANC is coming apart. It has been driven apart between the various factions. What voters need to do is consolidate behind the DA. You don't have to love us. You just have to know that we govern well and that we're not corrupt. And that if you want your city to stop falling down a bottomless pit, you need to start making the decision for good, corruption-free governance and capacity in the right places. And you have to start the long and difficult process of rebuilding. But in a democracy, that is up to the voters. And the voters are going to have to make that decision. We can't make it for them. We can just offer them the best candidates we can find. We can offer them a good plan, which we've implemented in Cape Town and in Midvaal and in Umgeni and in Kucha and in a whole range of other local authorities where we govern. And people are welcome to go and look at those local authorities, look at the record of those local authorities, look at what statistics South Africa says, what the annual household survey says. You'll see that in all of the DA-governed municipalities, things are getting a lot better. We're all investing in infrastructure in DA's municipalities. We pay our bill to Eskom, so Eskom doesn't cut us off. We fix our water leaks, so we don't lose more water than we use. We do all of those things. And if you want that story in Johannesburg, people know what to do. We tell them every election, in the end, it is their choice. Do take sentiments very seriously. They're important in politics. But in the end, people must make a choice. Do they want to fix their city or don't they? Simple choice. That's the first point. The second point is, you say there doesn't seem to have been support from the center for Celia Brink. We did whatever we possibly could to support those mayors. And in the end, it had nothing to do with the party that they were voted out of office. The bottom line is we were not prepared to put Kenny Kunene into a critical portfolio, which was a tender-rich portfolio, and we knew exactly what was going to happen. We're not prepared to be part of governments that see government as transactional and opportunities to tap into capital flows. We're not prepared to do that. There's a bridge on which we're not prepared to cross, and that was one of them. Issues tied up in that particular question that let me unpack them. Firstly, there's a fundamental contradiction in saying that we're prepared to give up a mayoralty because we're greedy. That is a fundamental contradiction. Of course, we have certain principles and values, and we stand up for them. And we would like to have a mayor, but we're not prepared to sacrifice our core values and principles to grab the mayoralty. So for me, that seems to be the opposite of greedy, and it seems to be the opposite of arrogant. Being principled is not to be arrogant. We don't accept some of the power plays that other parties enter into or want to enter into, which does not make us arrogant. It makes us principled. And we have our principles and we stand by our principles, which someone has to in this very complex political space. Then it's a very easy and cheap argument to use if you haven't got any other argument to call someone arrogant or racist. And of course, immediately, the media love it because they don't have to understand the issues. They just use the biggest slur that's been said, bit of clickbait there. Zille is a racist, Zille is arrogant, this and that, and the next thing. Instead of actually just digging to see what the facts are and analyzing the facts, they take the slur and the insult that is thrown around and substitute that for a proper analysis of the story. So that's become the rule in our politics, where people can't argue their case. They just hurl an insult, and then the media very obligingly just picks up that insult. So we don't go along with that. Then it's hilarious to hear you say that we were greedy in the Gauteng negotiation. I mean, just do the maths. We were 6 percentage points behind the ANC, 6 percentage points. There were 13 positions on offer. They wanted to give us 3 non-entity portfolios out of 13 and keep the rest for the ANC. Who's being greedy? They wanted to give us e-government, environment, and agriculture in Gauteng. They wouldn't give us education, they wouldn't give us health, and we were just slightly smaller than them. So who's being greedy? You see, that's exactly the point that I'm making. The Sufi can throw out the allegation that we're greedy. The media pick it up without any interrogation. It's a nice bit of clickbait, and out it goes. We would have been selling out completely if we had accepted Lesufi's terms. So on the one hand, today you put it to me that we've been selling out. On the other hand, you put it to me that we're being greedy. In Gauteng, we were simply saying this is our due. Lesufi refused to meet it because he knew what we would uncover if we got serious portfolios to which we were entitled by the election result. So we were acting with integrity, in good faith, according to a fair formula, and he wanted to keep us out at all costs. And he wanted the result when he didn't have the DA in government. That's exactly what he wanted. There has to be a balance between the rights of parents and governing bodies and the Department of Education and schools as a whole. And that balance is critical to maintain. What we're arguing is that Bella completely topples that balance over and puts it squarely in the hands of the head of department. And Lesufi and Chilwani, his MEC for Education, has made it very, very clear that there's no need for a single Afrikaans medium school to exist in Gauteng. So they've made it clear how they're going to use that act. They're not going to use that act to get a balance between the different rights in education. They're going to use it as part of their revenge project against Afrikaans. That's what is going down here. And the evidence is what they themselves have said. Chilwani has said that there's no need for a single Afrikaans medium school in Gauteng. Lesufi, who also wants grade 1s to fix fridges and irons, apparently, according to his statement that he made recently about multi-certification, when he can't even get them to learn to read, but we'll leave that there. Lesufi has said quite openly that he sees this as a continuation of the 1976 uprising, and that the entire point is that Black children don't want to learn in Afrikaans. They don't have to learn in Afrikaans. No one has to learn in Afrikaans. But nowhere has it ever been said, and it's in fact unconstitutional to say, that no one may learn in Afrikaans. I don't know what the Progressive Caucus claims to stand for, but I do know what the EFF and MK stand for. And they stand for a political system in which the leader controls the party controls the state, and the state controls the economy. That is totalitarianism, and it is the exact opposite of progressive. The alternative to that is what the DA stands for: constitutionalism, non-racialism, the rule of law, a market economy, and accountable leadership. So those are the two opposite poles in our society. One is represented by the EFF and now MK as well, and the other is represented by the DA. And the ANC falls somewhere in the middle, and some people in the ANC tend more towards the DA's vision, and other people in the ANC tend more towards the EFF-MK vision. Well, you've got to get some votes in order for that to have a future. Now, the DA grew in the last election, and I'm not sure if any other parties in the Moonshot Pact grew. So if you want a future for that kind of coalition, you have to grow your voter base. I must confess that I don't know the full detail. I do know that we've got our MEC for finance there, who's trying to cut out corruption and get a grip on the finances, which is a very important and a good thing. And we've got our MEC for public works there, who's trying to come to grips with the construction mafia, which is an essential thing. So these are all things we're trying to do with not too much leverage, because we also did not get up to 20% of the vote in KwaZulu-Natal. So the biggest party in the coalition was the IFP, and then there was the ANC, and then there was us, and then there was the NFP. So it is a four-party coalition, which is obviously complex and difficult to manage, but the premier is the IFP, as it should be, and we are doing our best to hold it together, and we're doing our very best to bring our path through our portfolios. Well, Cyril Ramaphosa is a facilitative leader. He likes to move things along to consensus, and that certainly has its place in politics. And when you have a very divided party, it's often the best way to go, which he has, a very, very divided party. Jacob Zuma's leadership style is completely hands-off, as long as he can get his cadres deployed into every single position so that he can control them for purposes of corruption and extraction. And that is his leadership style. Now, he's a very pleasant person and charming person on a one-on-one basis, but he's deeply corrupt. And he sees being in office as a license to loot.
The Creative Passport YouTube channel. Arts, politics, breaking news, podcast, capacity building, and many more. The channel is innovative, engaging, thought-provoking, thread-sending, insightful, informative, inspiring, compelling, impactful, authentic. Please subscribe, like, comment, share, and don't forget to press that notification button.